Listen carefully, because what you're about to hear is not just a Halloween story. It's a glimpse into the moments when the mask of normal life slips and something darker looks back. Every year, millions of people celebrate Halloween like it's harmless fun. Costumes, candy, laughter in the streets, children running door to door under orange lights while adults smile and pretend everything is safe. But here's the truth most people never stop to consider. Halloween is the one night of the year where strangers are allowed to hide their identities and walk among us without question. Masks become normal, suspicion disappears, doors open freely. And sometimes the wrong people take advantage of that. What you're about to hear are 3 disturbing true Halloween stories. Not urban legends, not internet fiction meant to entertain you. Real encounters, real fear. Moments where ordinary people came face to face with something they were never meant to see. But there's something deeper hiding beneath these stories. Because when you listen closely, you start to notice a pattern. Strangers watching from the dark, people appearing where they shouldn't be, voices that sound almost rehearsed, mechanical, as if someone is following a script. Some of these encounters feel less like random crime and more like something organized, something planned, something studying its targets. Tonight, you're not just listening to scary stories, you're stepping into moments when the illusion of safety shattered. Moments where people realized that the world is far less controlled than we're told. And once you understand that, you start seeing things differently. You start noticing who's watching, who's following, who's pretending to belong. So keep your mind sharp while you listen, because these stories aren't just about Halloween. They're about what happens when the masks come off and the wrong people are standing underneath them. And the first story begins on a Halloween night in 2023. A quiet neighborhood, a tired community worker, 2 kids who just wanted candy, and a group of strangers waiting in the dark for reasons that still don't make sense. But before the night ended, one man would realize something terrifying, that the people watching him in the shadows were never there by accident. The man telling this story was 22 years old at the time, a community worker, the kind of guy people trust around kids and families, the type of person who believes the world mostly makes sense. Halloween of 2023 had been exhausting for him. His job had hosted a full-day festival for families in the community. Games, costume contests, trivia for candy, even a chaotic kids versus parents dodgeball match. Hundreds of people, loud music, children running everywhere in costumes. By the time it ended, his body felt like it had been drained dry, the kind of tired that sinks deep into your bones. All he wanted was to go home, sit down, and let the silence swallow the noise of the day. And for about an hour, that's exactly what happened. Then his phone rang. It was his little sister, Savannah. 15 years old, still young enough to love Halloween with that pure excitement adults slowly lose. She had a request. Actually, more like a mission. She and his nephew, Jackson, wanted to go trick-or-treating. Their parents didn't feel like taking them. Jackson's parents didn't feel like it either. And somehow, as it always does in families, the responsibility landed on the older brother.
He almost said no. His body was begging him to stay on the couch. But something inside him, the instinct to protect, the instinct to show up for family, pushed him to grab his keys instead. He drove over to his parents' house and picked them up. Savannah had gone all out on her costume. She had painted her face ghost white and dressed as Raven from Teen Titans, complete with the dark cloak and serious expression the character is known for. Jackson had chosen Sub-Zero from Mortal Kombat. Blue mask, fake ninja stance, the confidence of an 11-year-old who believed the world was an adventure waiting to happen. Looking at them, the man almost forgot how tired he was. So he decided to do it right. Instead of walking around their quiet neighborhood, he drove them to a larger area known for big Halloween decorations and generous houses handing out candy. A busy neighborhood, lots of families, lots of lights, the kind of place where nothing bad should ever happen. For the first hour, it felt exactly like that. Kids everywhere, parents laughing, porches glowing orange, candy bowls overflowing. One older man even stood outside grilling hot dogs instead of giving candy, telling kids he preferred giving them something with protein. It felt wholesome, safe, normal. But as the night stretched on, something began to change. The crowds thinned, the laughter faded, and the streets slowly grew quiet. That's when he noticed the figure standing across the street, completely still, watching.
At first, it barely registered, just a shape in the darkness across the street. Halloween does that to people. Your brain automatically assumes every strange silhouette is just another costume, another person trying to be spooky for fun. But something about this one felt different. The yard where the figure stood was completely dark. No porch lights, no decorations, no bowl of candy left out for kids. Just a quiet house and a person standing motionless in the grass. The man slowed his walking slightly. His instincts had always been sharp. Working in community programs teaches you something important. Always know what's happening around you, especially when kids are involved. So he glanced over again. The figure was dressed completely in black. Not a normal Halloween costume either. It looked like a hooded cloak draped over tactical clothing underneath. The face was hidden behind a full black mask. No eye holes visible from where he stood. No expression, just stillness. The person appeared to be staring directly at them. He felt that strange tension crawl up his spine, that quiet alarm that doesn't scream danger yet, but whispers that something isn't right. Without breaking stride, he leaned slightly toward Savannah and Jackson. "Stay close to me," he said quietly. Savannah noticed the seriousness in his voice immediately. Jackson didn't. Jackson laughed. "Probably just someone trying to scare people," the boy said, kicking a piece of gravel across the sidewalk. And honestly, that explanation almost made sense. Halloween was the perfect excuse for people to stand in shadows wearing creepy outfits. Still, something about the way the person stood there felt wrong. Too still, too deliberate. They kept walking. The man resisted the urge to stare again, but his awareness stayed locked on the figure. Every few steps, his peripheral vision checked the yard. Still there, still watching. The silence of the street seemed heavier now. Fewer kids, fewer porch lights. The fun energy from earlier had drained away like water down a gutter. They had reached the last house of the night. Jackson's candy bag was overflowing. Savannah looked satisfied. So they started the 10-minute walk back to the car.
The road behind them was darker than before. That's when the man heard it. Heavy footsteps, boots striking pavement, slow, measured, not running, not sneaking, just following. His stomach tightened instantly. He turned his head slightly and looked back over his shoulder. And there it was again, the same figure, closer now. The cloak had shifted just enough under the streetlight for him to see more details. Black tactical vest, black pants tucked into heavy boots, a full spandex mask stretched tightly across the face. Whoever this was, they weren't wearing a costume meant to entertain anyone. They were dressed for something else, something serious. And the worst part? They were walking directly behind them.
The moment he saw the figure following them, every protective instinct inside him snapped awake. This wasn't a coincidence anymore. This wasn't a Halloween prank. Whoever this person was, they had left the yard and were now walking directly behind them in the dark. Same pace, same distance, watching. The man leaned slightly toward Savannah and Jackson without turning around again. His voice dropped low, calm, controlled. "The person I pointed out earlier is behind us," he whispered. "They're following us." Savannah's face immediately went pale beneath the white makeup of her costume. She understood the seriousness instantly. Jackson didn't fully grasp it yet, but even he could hear the tension in the man's voice. "Listen carefully," he continued quietly. "Do not stop walking. Do not turn around. Just stay close and act normal." This wasn't the moment to panic. Panic makes people unpredictable. Panic gives the wrong person power. So they walked, step by step, pretending nothing was wrong. But the man could hear it clearly now. Boots hitting concrete, heavy, measured, still following. He risked a quick glance back again. The distance between them hadn't changed. The figure wasn't rushing, wasn't hiding, just calmly trailing them through the quiet neighborhood like it was the most normal thing in the world. The mask reflected a faint glow from the streetlight. No emotion, no expression, just a black surface staring forward. That's when the man started thinking about something he hadn't mentioned to the kids. Inside his backpack was a handgun, a Glock. He carried it legally for protection. Working in community programs sometimes meant dealing with unstable situations. It wasn't something he talked about openly, but Savannah knew. And judging by the look in her eyes now, she was remembering. They kept walking. The car was only a few minutes away, but those minutes suddenly felt like miles. The street was nearly empty now. A few houses still had porch lights on, but most families had already gone inside. Halloween was ending, and the silence was growing heavier with every step. Then something else happened. The footsteps behind them grew louder, closer. The figure was closing the distance, slowly, deliberately. The man leaned down again, whispering quickly, "When we get to the car, you two get inside immediately. Don't ask questions." Savannah nodded. Jackson gripped his candy bag tighter. They reached the car. The man turned around fully now, and for the first time, he saw the figure clearly standing under a streetlight. The cloak hung loosely over the tactical gear, black boots, black vest, black mask stretched tight across the face. No visible weapon, but something about the posture screamed danger. The figure stopped about 20 feet away, watching, waiting. That's when the man made a decision that would change everything about that night. He reached into his backpack and pulled out the Glock, pointing it directly at the masked stranger in the street. And the reaction he got was not what he expected at all.
The moment the gun came out, the entire atmosphere shifted. Up until that point, the masked figure had moved with quiet confidence. The slow steps, the steady following, the silence that suggested control. But the second the Glock appeared, the figure stopped. Hands lifted slowly into the air. Not panicked, not shocked, just surprised. The man kept the gun steady, his voice sharp now. "Why are you following us?" Savannah and Jackson were already scrambling into the back seat of the car behind him, candy bags rustling, doors opening. But he didn't look away from the figure. Every instinct in his body was locked onto the stranger standing under the dim streetlight. The masked person tilted her head slightly, then slowly reached up and removed the mask. What appeared underneath only made things stranger. It was a woman, early 30s maybe, pale face, dark hair pulled back tightly. But what stood out most wasn't her appearance, it was her expression. There was no fear in her eyes, no anger, just a blank, distant look, like someone reading lines from memory. She stared at him for a moment before speaking. "I'm an undercover cop," she said calmly. Her voice sounded oddly flat, robotic almost, like she had practiced the sentence too many times. "I received a call about a break-in in that house," she continued, gesturing vaguely toward the dark yard where he had first seen her. "I was checking the area." The man didn't lower the gun. Her explanation made no sense. "You were standing in the yard facing away from the house, and now you're following us down the street." She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she simply stared at him. Then she spoke again. "When you looked at me earlier, I suspected you might be the one responsible for the break-in." The explanation was absurd, completely illogical. Why would someone break into a house, then casually walk around the neighborhood with two kids? Why would an undercover officer be dressed in tactical gear and a cloak? And most importantly, why would an officer follow civilians silently through the street instead of identifying themselves? The man felt his grip tighten slightly on the Glock. He asked the question that had been growing in his mind. "If you're undercover, why are you wearing tactical gear? And what's with the cloak?" This time she didn't answer. Her expression changed slightly. The blank look in her eyes twisted into something darker, something irritated, as if she didn't like being questioned. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Savannah and Jackson sat frozen inside the car. The street was silent. Then the woman smiled. Not a friendly smile, not a reassuring smile, a slow, cold smile that made the man's skin crawl. And the words she spoke next would stay in his mind for years. "If you didn't have that gun," she paused slightly, "in this night would have ended very differently." Then movement appeared in the darkness behind her. 4 more figures stepping out from between the houses.
For a split second, the man thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. But the movement in the darkness became clearer. 4 figures stepped out from the narrow spaces between the houses, one by one, slow, deliberate. All of them dressed almost exactly like the woman. Black tactical clothing, heavy boots, dark silhouettes moving in the dim streetlight.
No Halloween costumes, no decorations, no signs that they belonged to the cheerful world that had existed on these streets just an hour earlier. And the way they moved wasn't random, it was coordinated. The woman didn't even turn around when they appeared, which meant one thing: she already knew they were there. This had never been a random encounter. The man's brain started firing through possibilities at lightning speed. Police? No, this wasn't how law enforcement operated. Security team? Private contractors? That didn't explain the masks, the silence, or the way they had followed him instead of identifying themselves. The four figures kept walking forward slowly. Now the group stood 5 people strong, 5 strangers, 5 pairs of eyes staring directly at him and the car behind him. Savannah and Jackson were already inside. The doors were shut, but he knew something important. If things went bad right now, he was the only thing standing between those kids and whatever these people wanted. He raised the Glock slightly higher, not threatening, just enough to make it clear he wasn't lowering it. The woman's smile widened slightly. Behind her, the 4 figures stopped walking. Now they were spread out across the street like a silent wall. And that's when the man noticed something even more disturbing. None of them looked surprised. None of them looked scared. They weren't angry either. Their faces were completely blank, emotionless, like mannequins that had learned to walk. The woman tilted her head again, still smiling, still staring at him like he was part of some experiment. Then she spoke quietly. "You should leave." It wasn't a threat. It wasn't advice either. It sounded more like a calculation, as if she had just decided something. The man didn't hesitate. He stepped backward toward the driver's door without taking his eyes off them, opened it, got inside, locked the doors instantly. Savannah was breathing fast in the back seat. Jackson looked frozen in shock. The engine roared to life, and as the car pulled away, he glanced once more through the windshield. The woman was still standing there, still smiling, but the 4 figures behind her were not. They just stood there, silent, watching the car disappear down the street, like statues guarding something unseen. The drive back was completely silent. No one spoke, no one moved, but the man's mind kept circling one terrifying question. Why them? There had been dozens of people walking those streets earlier, families, kids, parents, but somehow those 5 strangers had chosen to follow him. And what he didn't know yet was that Halloween night wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. When he finally dropped Savannah and Jackson off at their parents' house, the silence in the car hadn't broken, not once. Jackson clutched his candy bag like it was a life vest. Savannah still looked pale under the ghost-white makeup of her costume. Before they got out, the man turned around in his seat. "You two okay?" Savannah nodded slowly, but her eyes said something different. Jackson asked the question kids always ask when they know something bad just happened but don't fully understand it. "Were those people bad guys?" The man paused. He didn't know the answer, and somehow that uncertainty felt worse than if he did. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but you did exactly what I asked you to do. That's what matters." They went inside the house, safe, at least for now. He waited until the door closed behind them before pulling away. Driving home that night felt different than normal. Every red light, every passing car, every shadow along the road suddenly felt suspicious. When something like that happens, your brain doesn't just calm down once it's over. It rewires itself. You start watching everything. You start questioning things that used to feel ordinary. The woman's words kept repeating in his head. If you didn't have that gun, this night would have ended very differently. What did that mean? Robbery? Kidnapping? Something worse? And why did those 4 other people appear at the exact moment they did? It felt too coordinated, too controlled, almost like they had been waiting for some kind of signal. He finally pulled into the parking lot of his apartment complex. Everything looked normal, quiet, peaceful, the kind of quiet that makes you feel silly for being paranoid. He went inside and locked the door, checked the windows, turned on a few lights, then sat down on the couch, staring into space while his brain replayed the encounter again and again. Sleep didn't come easy that night, and the following days didn't help much either, because the questions never left his mind. Who were those people? Why were they dressed like that? Why were they watching him? But the thing that bothered him the most was something else. The woman's expression. It wasn't angry. It wasn't scared. It was irritated, like someone's plan had been interrupted, like someone who had expected something to go differently. 3 days later, the answer to that feeling arrived, in the form of a single text message from an unknown number. No words, no explanation, just a photo. And the moment he saw what was in that photo, the fear he thought was over came rushing back stronger than ever.
3 days passed before the message arrived, just long enough for the man to start convincing himself that maybe, just maybe, the whole thing had been a strange Halloween encounter that meant nothing. People do that. When something terrifying happens, the brain tries to soften it. It tries to build logical explanations so life can feel normal again. Maybe they were security guards. Maybe they were off-duty law enforcement. Maybe it was some weird Halloween prank that got out of hand. Those thoughts helped him sleep again. Barely. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. No name, no message, just a single image attached. He opened it and instantly felt the blood drain from his face. The picture showed his car, parked in the lot outside his apartment complex, taken from a distance. The angle made it clear the person who took the photo had been watching the building, not just driving past. There were no words, no threats, no explanation, just the photo. That silence was the most disturbing part, because it meant the message didn't need an explanation. The message was the photo. We know where you live. His mind immediately went back to the woman's smile. If you didn't have that gun, this night would have ended very differently. The man didn't hesitate. He called the police. He explained everything. The encounter on Halloween, the 5 people in tactical gear, the woman pretending to be an undercover officer, and now the photo of his car. The officer taking the report listened carefully, but when the man finished explaining, the response was frustratingly predictable. Without a direct threat, there wasn't much they could do. No crime had technically occurred. The woman hadn't attacked them. The message didn't contain any words, just a picture. It was disturbing, but legally,
It floated in a gray area. Still, the report was filed, and the man tried to move forward. But curiosity has a dangerous side. Sometimes it pushes people to do things they probably shouldn't. A week later, he drove back to the neighborhood where it happened, the same quiet street, the same dark house where he first saw the cloaked figure standing in the yard. He parked across the road, walked up to the front door, and knocked. After a moment, a man in his 40s opened it. The homeowner looked confused when he asked the question, "Did someone break into your house on Halloween night?" The man frowned. No. He said he had gone to bed early that night because he had work the next morning. He hadn't heard anything, hadn't seen anything, and definitely hadn't called the police about a break-in, which meant one thing: the woman had been lying about everything. And the deeper the man thought about that night, the more one question began to haunt him. If those people weren't police, then what exactly were they? The man never got an answer to that question. No investigation ever uncovered who those 5 people were. No police report matched their description. No neighbors remembered seeing them. It was like they had appeared out of nowhere and then disappeared the same way. But the experience changed him. Before that night, he was the kind of person who believed danger was obvious, that bad people looked like criminals, that you could recognize threats easily. Now he knew something different. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who look organized, professional, prepared, the ones who move calmly, quietly, like they're following a plan. After the photo appeared on his phone, he installed cameras around his apartment, a security system, motion sensors, anything that would give him a little more peace of mind. Weeks passed, then months. No more messages ever arrived. No strange figures appeared outside his home. Life slowly returned to normal. But something inside him had changed permanently. Even now, 2 years later, he still thinks about that night sometimes. The silent street, the masked woman, the 4 figures emerging from the darkness, and the way she smiled when she said those words. If you didn't have that gun, this night would have ended very differently. What did she mean? What had they planned? Why did they choose him? Those questions may never have answers, but there is one thing he's absolutely certain about, something he tells people whenever Halloween comes around. Because most people treat that night like a harmless celebration, costumes, candy, decorations. But Halloween also creates something else, a world where strangers can hide their identities in plain sight, where masks erase accountability, where someone can walk down a quiet street dressed in black and no one questions it. For most people, that freedom is just part of the fun. But for the wrong kind of person, it's the perfect cover. So, if you take anything away from this story, remember this. Always pay attention to your surroundings. Always trust your instincts, and never assume the person hiding behind a mask is there for the same reason you are. Because sometimes the scariest thing about Halloween is realizing the monsters aren't costumes at all.